You know that moment when everything you believed about your life suddenly shatters? When the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally reveal that you were never really part of their equation at all. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, if you've ever wondered why you seem to matter less than everyone else around you, then what I'm about to share will either terrify you or set you free. Because 3 months ago, I discovered something about unconditional love that philosophers have been warning us about for centuries, and it cost me everything I thought I knew about family. My name is Sarah, and for 28 years, I lived under what Plato called the noble lie, the comforting illusion that keeps society functioning even when it's built on deception. In my case, that lie was simple. I mattered to my parents as much as my siblings did. The call came on a Tuesday. Mom's voice was unusually formal when she asked me to come over for dinner. "We have something important to discuss with the family," she said. The way she said family should have been my first clue. There was a distance in it, like I was being invited to observe rather than participate. When I arrived, my brother Jake and sister Emma were already there, sitting in the living room with expressions I couldn't quite read. Dad was in his usual chair, holding a manila folder like it contained the secrets of the universe. "We've been thinking about the future," Mom began, "and we wanted to be transparent with everyone about our will. Nietzsche once wrote about the eternal return, the idea that we're doomed to repeat the same patterns forever unless we have the courage to break them." As my father opened that folder, I was about to discover which pattern had been repeating in my family for nearly 3 decades. "Jake, you'll inherit the house and the investment portfolio. Emma, the vacation property and Mom's jewelry collection go to you." Dad's voice was matter-of-fact, like he was reading a grocery list. I waited. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. "What about Sarah?" Emma asked, and for a moment, I felt grateful that someone had noticed the elephant in the room. Dad looked at me with the kind of expression you'd give a distant acquaintance. "Sarah has always been different, independent. She doesn't really need our help." Those words hit me like a physical blow. Independent. The euphemism parents use when they mean expendable. But here's what I realized in that moment. Sitting in the living room where I'd spent countless Christmas mornings and birthday celebrations, they weren't wrong about me being different. They just had no idea how different I actually was. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, writing from a Nazi prison cell, observed that the ultimate test of a moral society is the kind of world that it leaves to its children. My parents had just revealed exactly what kind of world they were leaving me, one where I didn't exist. You see, for the past 5 years, while my siblings were building what they thought were impressive careers, Jake as a middle manager, Emma as a dental hygienist, I had been quietly building something else entirely. It started with a simple app idea, nothing revolutionary, just a better way to organize small business inventory. But unlike my siblings, who always announced their plans and asked for family investment or support, I worked in silence. I coded at night, pitched to investors on weekends, and built my company brick by brick while everyone assumed I was just figuring things out. The app sold to a Fortune 500 company last year. The acquisition price? $12 million. But I never told them. And sitting there, listening to my parents divide up assets worth maybe $800,000 total while completely excluding me, I understood why I had kept my secret. Machiavelli wrote that it's better to be feared than loved, but he missed a crucial third option. It's better to be underestimated than either. My family had spent decades underestimating me, and in doing so, they had given me the greatest gift possible: complete freedom to become who I really was. The conversation continued around me like I was a ghost. They discussed tax implications and transfer dates, practical matters for the people who mattered. I sat there, watching my siblings nod along, accepting their parents' assessment that I was somehow less deserving of consideration. And then something beautiful happened. I stopped caring about their approval. Marcus Aurelius taught that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. In that moment, watching my family casually erase me from their future, I found mine. I stood up quietly. "Thank you for being so clear about where I stand," I said. "It actually makes things much easier." They looked confused. Mom started to say something about how they thought I'd understand, how I'd always been so independent, how this didn't mean they loved me any less. I smiled. "You're absolutely right. I am independent. More than you know. Here's what most people don't understand about revenge. The best kind isn't about hurting the people who hurt you. It's about becoming so successful that their opinion of you becomes irrelevant. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. But the story doesn't end there. 3 weeks later, Jake called. He was panicking. The company he worked for was downsizing, and his position was being eliminated. He wanted to know if I could help him find something new, maybe put in a good word somewhere. I don't really have those kinds of connections, I told him honestly. I didn't mention that I could have bought his entire company with my liquid assets alone. Emma called a month after that. Her dental practice was struggling and she needed a loan to keep it afloat. Could I help? After all, we're family. I wish I could, I said, but you know how I am with money. Never been good at saving. The lie tasted like freedom, but Mom's call was different. Her voice was small, frightened. Dad had been diagnosed with early-stage dementia. The medical bills were mounting. The house, Jake's inheritance, would need to be sold to cover care costs. The investments were tanking. Emma's vacation property had a foundation problem that would cost more to fix than it was worth. Everything they had planned to leave their deserving children was crumbling. "Sarah," she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. I know things have been complicated between us, but you're the only one who seems to have it together. Could you help us?" Aristotle believed in the concept of poetic justice, the idea that virtue is ultimately rewarded and vice is ultimately punished, not by external forces, but by the natural consequences of our choices. As I held the phone, listening to my mother's desperation, I realized I was witnessing poetic justice in real time. I could have said yes. I could have written a check that would have solved all their problems without even denting my account balance. I could have been the bigger person, the family hero, the daughter who rose above their treatment and saved them all. Instead, I said, "I'm sorry, Mom, but you raised me to be independent, remember? I'm sure you'll figure it out." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Sarah, please. We're family." "Are we?" I asked. "Because 3 months ago, you made it very clear that family means Jake and Emma. I was just the independent one who didn't need anything from you. Well, congratulations. You were right." I hung up. "Now, before you judge me, before you think I'm heartless or cruel, let me ask you something. How many times have you been told you're too sensitive when you called out unfair treatment? How many times have you been gaslit into believing that your hurt feelings were your problem, not their behavior?" The philosopher Emmanuel Levinas wrote about the face of the other, the idea that looking into another person's face creates an infinite responsibility toward them. But what happens when the people who should have seen your face first, who should have felt that responsibility most deeply, choose to look away? My parents spent decades looking away from me. They saw Jake's face and felt pride. They saw Emma's face and felt love. When they looked at me, they saw inconvenience, difference, someone who would figure it out on her own. So I did. The final call came 6 months later. It was Jake, not Mom. His voice was hollow, defeated. "Sarah, I don't know if you've heard, but Dad's gotten worse. Mom can't handle the care costs anymore. They're going to lose the house. Emma and we don't have anything left to give. We've tried everything." He paused, and I could hear him struggling with what came next. "We found out about your company, about the sale. We know you have money." There it was. The truth that had been lurking beneath every family interaction for years. I was only valuable when they needed something. "Jake," I said gently, "do you remember what Dad said when he excluded me from the will? He said I was independent, that I didn't need help. Well, he was teaching me something important, that needing help makes you worthy of consideration, and not needing it makes you disposable." "But we're family," he said, using the same words Mom had used. "Yes," I agreed. "And you taught me exactly what family means in this house. It means conditional love based on perceived need and worthiness. It means dividing people into categories, those who matter and those who don't. Here's the uncomfortable truth that no one wants to acknowledge. Families aren't automatically sacred. Blood relation doesn't create obligation. Love, real love, is demonstrated through actions, not declarations. Carl Jung wrote about the shadow self, the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. My family's shadow was their conditional love, their hierarchy of worth, their comfortable assumption that I would always be there to fall back on despite never being included in their plans. They wanted me to be their safety net while treating me like their spare tire, hidden away until needed, then expected to perform flawlessly when called upon. I refused to play that role. 6 months after that last conversation, I moved across the country. I started a new company, made new friends, built a life surrounded by people who chose to include me, not because they needed something from me, but because they genuinely valued my presence. I never heard from my family again, except for a single text from Emma a year later. Dad passed. Thought you should know. I felt sad, not for the relationship I was losing, but for the one I had never really had. People ask me if I regret my choice, if I feel guilty for not helping when they needed me most. And here's what I tell them. Guilt is the emotion we feel when we violate our own moral code. But my moral code had evolved. It no longer included the obligation to set myself on fire to keep other people warm, especially people who had made it clear that my warmth was never particularly appreciated in the first place. Seneca taught that every slave has the power to break free from their chains. My chains were the belief that family love was automatic, that I owed loyalty to people who had never extended it to me, that being the bigger person meant accepting mistreatment with grace. Breaking those chains didn't make me cruel, it made me free. And here's the lesson that extends far beyond my story. You cannot love people into loving you back. You cannot earn affection through sacrifice from people who have already decided you're expendable. You cannot change the fundamental nature of relationships built on inequality. What you can do is recognize your worth independent of other people's assessments. You can choose to invest your energy in relationships that are reciprocal rather than parasitic. You can decide that your peace is more valuable than other people's comfort. My parents thought they were teaching me independence. They were right, just not in the way they intended. True independence isn't just financial, it's emotional, psychological, spiritual. It's the ability to walk away from situations that diminish you, even when society tells you that walking away makes you the villain. Sometimes the most radical act of self-love is refusing to participate in your own devaluation. Sometimes the deepest revenge isn't about punishing the people who hurt you. It's about building a life so fulfilling that their absence becomes a relief rather than a loss. As I write this from my home office, looking out at a view they'll never see, surrounded by people who chose me rather than tolerated me, I realize something profound. My parents gave me exactly what I needed, just not what they intended. They taught me that love is a choice, that family is who shows up for you, and that sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are. So the next time someone tells you that blood is thicker than water, remember the full quote. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Choose your covenant wisely. What would you do if you discovered your family had written you out of their future? Share your thoughts below. And if this story resonated with you, subscribe for more tales of justice served and lives reclaimed, because sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to play a game where you're destined to lose.